Point number 3, one of my favorites, employees versus independent contractors. I see a lot of business owners, particularly when they're starting, they say everybody's an independent contractor. Why are they an independent contractor? Because you don't want to pay payroll taxes on them. It's expensive. You have to pay payroll taxes. You have to deal with unemployment insurance, depending on how many you have. You may have to deal with medical insurance. It's very expensive to have employees. Having independent contractors is less expensive. You write them a check and then they're gone. Okay? It's less expensive except if they're actually employees. All right? Most people that you think are independent contractors to you, the IRS in the state of New Jersey are going to tell you that they're employees to you, all right? An independent contractor is truly somebody like me, okay? So Chris, if you hire me, you're saying this is what I need done. You're not telling me how to do it. You're not telling me where to do it. You're looking for some kind of output, okay? So an independent contractor, you're not really directing them. It's more like you're hiring them to do a project, okay? An employee is somebody where you're saying, not only is this how I want it done, but this is how it is that I want you to do it. And a lot of times when you have an independent contractor, you're training them. Well, you train employees, you don't train independent contractors. Or you say, well, I'm going to have you as an independent contractor, but you need to be in my offices 3 days a week, and while you're in my offices 3 days a week, this is what it is that I need you to do. Or you say somebody's an independent contractor, but they're totally integral to your business. Like Kathy, if you had a programmer and you couldn't operate your business without that programmer, can you really say that they're an independent contractor if you can't operate your business without that person? So that, from a questioning standpoint, most people, I think that they say to me, I have a lot of independent contractors. They actually have a lot of employees. And what is the issue when you have employees? And this gets back to your question then. When you're an employer, you have to pay something called payroll tax. I'm sure you're all familiar with. You have to pay the other half of what the employee's payroll tax is, okay? That is one of the only personal liabilities that you have. So as an employer, your corporate shield is no good for you whatsoever when it comes to payroll tax liability. And that liability extends to every single shareholder of the company, to every officer of the company, and to any employee of the company who's involved with payroll. So you could have a bookkeeper who's personally liable for your failure to pay payroll taxes. And in this case, I'm not saying that you're failing to pay payroll taxes because you intended not to pay payroll taxes, but because you misclassified your your employee as an independent contractor. You didn't, in fact, pay the payroll taxes because you didn't think that you had to, okay? The liability is what they call joint and several. So let's say that the 4 of you own a business together. I can attach the assets from any one of you. It has to pay 100% of the bill. Okay? You may own 1% of the business, Kathy, and I can go after 100% of the payroll tax liability after you, because you might have a bank account. That's the easiest thing for me to be able to attach. Now I take all your money, and you can go sue them for whatever the other part of it is. Payroll tax liability is a huge deal, and it comes up in the issue of is it an independent contractor versus an employee. Because what happens if you say that you're an independent contractor? So Chris, I say that you're an independent contractor to my company. We have a little agreement, and in the agreement it says you're an independent contractor, you're going to pay all your taxes, okay? Well, what if you don't pay your taxes? What if you're like, I'm not going to worry about that. You know, I'll pay them at the end of the year, no problem. And you don't even get a, so not only do I have the liability just from the existence of the fact that you're actually an employee, but you didn't actually even pay the money. So now I'm responsible for the money. I have a penalty for misclassifying you. And I'm also responsible for the interest and penalties on your failure to pay. And I'm not done yet. What happens if the person gets hurt at your place of employment? If you say they're an independent contractor, they're an employee, you should have had workers' compensation insurance over them. You didn't have workers' comp insurance. Guess whose pocket it's coming out of for their care because they got injured there, but you as an employer didn't have the workers' comp insurance for them. So independent contractors are something that we see as sort of one of the biggest issues that there is. In your mind, am I asking them to do a project where I only care what the end result is, or am I telling them how to do it? And if you say, yes, I'm only asking to do a project, I don't care what the end result is, do I have an agreement with them that is very specific to say that they're an independent contractor and not an employee? And this might actually be somewhere where you want to actually have an attorney look at the agreement, not only to make sure the agreement is correct, but that the fact of your relationship, the agreement's not going to solve your problem, but that the fact of your actual relationship, they are an independent contractor and not actually an employee. And yes, part-time people can be employees. That's another question that I get. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah. Does if the person is essentially being paid by the hours,
right,
that pretty much automatically qualified enough
It's not
employee.
automatically, because again, I'm an attorney, so my clients pay me by the hour a lot of the times, and but that's just the method of compensation. But generally speaking, you look more like an employee if you're being paid by the hour, as opposed to a contractor. Again, for a project, you would say, you know, Kathy, you're hiring somebody, I need you to program this for me, and you come to a deal, and I'm going to pay you $5,000 to do it. That's a contractor. If you're telling the same person, I need you to program this on an ongoing basis, and I'm going to pay you $17 an hour, even if you say you're an independent contractor, I'm going to say that person's probably an employee of yours. Yes?
How about if you want to put on one of your children as an employee?
Right.
Let's assume the child is in college, and you know, put them on payroll, pay payroll taxes, and you want to have part of their compensation plan, the company pay their college tuition as part of a package. What can you do, what can't you do, and what are the limitations?
You're going to get into some issues there, because in order for it to be as part of an education, college doesn't also normally apply for a business education deduction for your business, because normally it's that you're furthering what it is that your training is. So going to college, you're not, it's not a specific thing. So for example, if my company would have paid me to get my law degree, they would not have been able to deduct it, because getting the law degree is too general, okay? However, once I was practicing in the tax law area, when I went back to get my master's in tax law, that would have been an expense that would have been deductible to the company. So the first thing that you have to look at is whether or not to the company it's a deductible expense, because otherwise, what have you really accomplished by trying to do this? You've paid a lot of payroll taxes. Secondly, the other idea is that you can use pre-tax dollars under certain welfare plans to do it, but when you have a welfare plan at your company, you have to offer it to all of your employees. So then you have to look at, okay, with the group of employees that I have, if my goal is really just to benefit this little subset of employees, how expensive is it going to be for me to be able to now, I have to give everybody the opportunity to benefit from it. So that's something else to be able to look at. Usually when I see people putting their kids onto payroll, and it's before they just changed the healthcare law, is usually to get them insurance, because they couldn't afford to be able to get insurance. You throw them on the payroll, you pay them $12,000 a year, and they'd be able to qualify as an employee and get insurance through your payroll. But that's usually what I've seen from that type of area. So yes.
Is there any specific process for transferring someone from, or transitioning from contractor to employee?
Yes. The IRS right now has a program in place where they are encouraging you to properly classify or reclassify your employees. And for larger companies, they will work with them to be able to say, we'll give you a penalty at a reduced rate for you to do a reclassification. And this is companies that are literally reclassifying thousands and thousands of workers, okay? On a smaller basis, for the people that are here in this room, put them on payroll, and it's sort of with your question about what do, I haven't had minutes in years, just go forward with it and just put them on payroll and deal with it from there. There's a 6-year statute of limitations on it, and you know, sort of like if, you know, as long as you're paying your mortgage, your bank doesn't usually bother you. As long as you start paying taxes, what's the really to come back about? So while the risk, if you are discovered by one of these, not you, of course, the theoretical person that you're talking about, is discovered by an agency, can be very expensive. The cost to a smaller business and going back and trying to figure out how much money should I have paid can be very high. You can sort of attempt to cure the problem by just putting them on payroll now. And, you know, looking at what their compensation is going to be, because now that you have to pay their taxes, if you were paying an independent contractor $25 an hour, you're not going to pay them $25 an hour as an employer because it costs you too much. Because presumably they were using part of that $25 an hour to pay their share of the taxes. So you're actually going to be paying them a little bit less. So, yes?
Maybe 2 questions.
Okay.
The workers' comp issue is always interesting to me, is that we do hire a lot of independent contractors, and
right.
we spend a lot of time trying to get a very, you know, ironclad contract. But it's my understanding that you do not need to, you're not required to buy workers' comp if you're a sole proprietor.
You aren't. So.
And so now the question that you brought up, if someone gets hurt and they don't have workers' comp, what is my line? And they're independent contractor, let's assume that.
Right. Well, you potentially have just what we call civil liability, because now do they get hurt because of something that you did wrong in your workplace? Because the reason the workers' comp works so well is that
They usually represent us in the field someplace, so
Right.
somebody else's workplace.
well, then if it's somebody else's workplace, they would go after them. But if it was in your workplace, that's really where the issue is. The better part is when we structure the agreements, the independent contractor agreements, I would suggest to you that you would require that your independent contractors carry workman's comp insurance, so that the issue, because it becomes your issue, because what ends up happening is, let's say they slip and fall in the parking lot of your best client, okay? They can sue your best client. They have the right to do that.
Usually I'm indemnified and it comes back to us. Anyway.
Right, but the client's mad at you. Right, you know, regardless of the legal stuff, the client's just not happy with you. And the reason workers' comp works so well is because you know if you go the workers' comp route, you're going to get money. So why would you bother going after anybody else? Because the money's sitting over here. The easy to get to money's sitting over here. So those are the kinds of things I would suggest putting in an actual agreement. Did I have one over here? Ken, you had one?
Interestingly, we do in fact require our subs to carry their own workers' comp. And for sole practitioners, you know, it's like $300 a year. It's not very expensive.
But it's the same as you pay for your own. Each employee costs you and it comes out of your first January paycheck usually, and then you're done with it for the year. You know, a couple of January paychecks, you're done paying your workers' comp.
But assuming that you got, you know, as a sub, I carry my own workers' comp. I have a disregarded entity, an LLC, and I contract with the prime as a sub independent contractor as the company, even though it's a personal service I render. Does that alter the equation?
In what way? I guess.
In terms of whether one's an employee or independent?
No, the existence of an entity is not going to change you from being an employee. The mere existence of an entity.
It's all these other things about direction.
Right. Well, because
specified hours.
if you have an entity, it goes towards it because you've put now time and effort into your entity. You're not just Joe Schmo on the street. But I have seen a lot of things where people are like, you know, hey, you know, I want to hire you, and you know, Kathy, I'd like to hire you, but I don't want you to be an employee, so just set up your LLC. And you set up the LLC, you work for them 50 hours a week at their location. The existence of the LLC isn't going to save you. So, you know, so it depends. It's a reality test. Yes.
We have used a subcontractor or an independent contractor that we do computer support. So we'll say, okay, this person's having a problem. We'll call that person. We'll let them set up the appointment. Let them go fix this. They tell us, okay, here's what I did. Here's how many hours. They have an LLC.
Right.
I've got proof of their insurance. Are we still in trouble?
I'd look at it. So, because it depends on how often you're using them, what level of skill it is that they're having, things. It's a New Jersey has a 21-point test on this, and that's totally separate from the IRS. So, yes.
I actually am a professional bookkeeper, so you've already scared the crap out of me with joint severability. However, beyond that, you know, I'm having discussions with two of my main clients right now where, you know, the scope of the work is shifting, and you know, the positive end of these discussions is that they're telling me, listen, you are absolutely crucial to our business.
Right.
So that's great. However, you know, hearing you talk over the last 15 minutes, it sounds to me like maybe I need to be shifting my contracts and, you know.
You may want to, because the thing is, you're not the person who's harmed. The employee/independent contractor, unless they didn't pay their taxes, they have no responsibility. This is entirely an employer liability. So the person who cares, shall we say, is the employer, not the person who's the contractor/employee. Because anyone's going to tell you, I'd rather be an independent contractor, because, you know, I mean, not that I'm jaded at all, but they're planning on taking the money and not paying their taxes. So, because if you're an employee, then your taxes are being paid for you. I mean, and that's really, so from the individual's perspective, they generally want to be an independent contractor. From the employer's perspective, you need to make sure they actually are an independent contractor before you treat them like that. So that would be my point there.